Hello guys, imagine you have a task to generate PDF invoice with Laravel for a lot of customers, like 5,000 for example. For example, there's admin panel button to generate the invoices. You cannot do that in sync because it will totally crash the server. So you probably use queues, right? And we made an experiment. So this is a tutorial article, free article on Laravel Daily, where we measure the performance of sync versus queues versus experimenting with queue workers and different servers. Very cheap DigitalOcean one and a bit more expensive. So let's see the numbers. And the idea came from my tweet roughly a month ago. So if you want to test your skills on more senior level, one of the tasks I mentioned was sending a monthly invoice to 10K customers or whatever is the bigger number. So first the code without queues for now. So get the orders, and then for each of the orders we also add benchmark here, and I will show you the numbers in a minute. And then we use DOM PDF library to save the invoice. Of course you can experiment with other PDF libraries or packages or external services, but that's not the point. The point is some kind of longer task that you need to run on 5,000 customers or 10,000 or whatever. And for now our first experiment is on the cheapest DigitalOcean droplet, this one for $6 per month. And if we launch that controller without the queues, this is the result. Basically, it crashes the server. The server is out of RAM memory, so it's not even a Laravel problem, it's a physical problem of server resources. So we must use queues. And this is our next step. I will kind of read this tutorial step by step, but with more comments. So we change the controller to for each and then dispatch the job to the queue. In our case, we use Redis as the most popular queue driver. And now we need to benchmark two things: how much it takes to dispatch all the jobs. And then with Laravel Horizon, we can measure how much time it takes to process the jobs. This is the code of the job to send the PDF. We have a query here because this is important when you queue the job. Sometimes, by the time that job is executed, that record may not exist in the database. So requerying like this is a pretty typical practice. And then basically the same thing. Handle saves the data. Now, if we execute that with one PDF file for one order, the dispatch is 14 milliseconds, and the execution time for one PDF repeated 5 times, it's 0.11 seconds. So really fast. But if we try to do that for 10 jobs, for 10 PDFs, the dispatch time is a bit bigger, 63 milliseconds, but still pretty quick. But the execution time for each job jumps to 2 seconds, which is roughly what I would say how much time it takes to generate a more complex PDF with DOM PDF library. So you can try to roughly calculate 2 seconds times 5,000 customers. It's almost 3 hours of time. And now if we try with all 5,000 PDFs, 5,000 orders, even dispatching time jumps to 54 seconds. So even to dispatch the jobs, we needed to increase the PHP timeout from 30 seconds to a few minutes. So if you work with queues, don't imagine that dispatching the job is really fast and doesn't cost anything from server resources. The queue driver and queue workers and queue management is also the process on the server, which takes time. And now this is the screenshot from Laravel Horizon while running those jobs. And this is the main number you need to pay attention to: 32 jobs per minute. So again, one job every 2 seconds or so. So max time waiting is 2 hours. So what can we do? We can take a look at the number of total processes, which is the amount of workers, which is in Laravel Horizon by default 10 queue workers. Let's increase that number and see what happens. So in the config of Horizon, we increase that to 50, and the result is this. Better. So now we have 95 jobs per minute, but it's still pretty slow. It will still take 50 minutes to execute all the jobs. Can we do something else? Of course, we can bump up the specification of the server, so DigitalOcean droplet can be increased. And this is exactly our next step, from $6 per month to $48 per month. So basically 8 times faster, better, and whatever. And if we launch that again, now we have 591. Which is much quicker, but I was expecting, to be honest, a bigger increase, because the price increase was 8x and this number increased by 6x only. And the reason is that while running all those jobs with 50 processes, we fully load the server CPU to the max of 100%. And this is a problem from two sides. First, the CPU is the actual bottleneck to, well, execute more jobs. But not only that, while the same server is 100%, the same server as your web application, that web application may be having total downtime, or at least load really slowly. And the reason for that is the queue workers amount. So to manage 50 queue workers, it's a more significant job in terms of server resources than you would think. Let me show you. So let's try to decrease the amount of queue workers. Of course, after all those changes, you need to restart Horizon, by the way, but let's lower that to 30 from 50. And look at this, jobs per minute actually increased. So now we can execute 5,000 PDFs in what, 3 minutes or so. That said, while looking at the CPU, it's still 100%, but in our testing, at least web application was loading, functioning well, so users should be able to at least use the web page if you don't have a lot of users simultaneously. But if we lower even more to the default 10 workers of Horizon, we have even bigger jobs per minute number, which means that it will load all the PDFs in just a few minutes. And in here we ended our experiment, our tutorial, which is again free on Laravel Daily, and I will link that in the description below. Probably there will be part 2 because people in the comments suggested deeper topics, questions, and other ways to optimize that. Some people, of course, suggested other PDF libraries, but that's not the point of this tutorial. Some people suggested batching the jobs by like 50 PDFs or something. Some people, of course, suggested separate servers for the queues, or maybe even a few servers, so we'll dive into that in the part 2. There was also one comment suggesting to try SQS driver instead of Redis. So yeah, if you have any ideas or questions, follow-up questions for the part 2 video, be active in the comments and be a co-author of that part 2. But for now, the conclusions are these. First, for such tasks, you definitely need queues. Second, if you have resource-consuming tasks like this one, bumping up the server specification, at least temporarily, may be the quickest solution without changing the code. And then finally, you can experiment with queue workers, but be careful and watch your CPU usage and don't let it reach 100% to take down all your application if you're working on the same server. What do you think? Any other conclusions, or maybe your experience is different? Let's discuss in the comments below as usual. That's it for this time, and see you guys in other videos.